a peek into observability from a tester's lens. And today we have Praveen Khan as our speaker. Good afternoon to you, Praveen. Praveen is a senior quality assurance consultant at ThoughtWork UK. Being a quality advocate, she believes delivering high quality products is everyone's responsibility. Having said that, once again, without any further ado, Praveen, the virtual stage is over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, so let me quickly share my screen before I start my presentation. Just a second. So can you all see my screen okay? All okay? I hope so. So maybe anyone can put it in the chat that you can see my screen, like my slides at least, or
Yes, we
anyone can
can.
confirm? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks everyone for joining this session today. This is my first time presenting at Dev Days conference, which is amazing to be part of. And I'm really excited to be part of this and sharing my learnings and experiences at this conference. As Just a quick introduction, as I've already got introduced, but just a quick one. So I'm Praveen Khan. I'm a senior test consultant at ThoughtWorks, which is based in London, UK. So today, as you can see, the title of my talk is A Peek into Observability from Tester's Lens. So I'm going to share my experience and talk about observability. So I'm going to share this in as a story. I'm sure you all love listening to the stories, and I promise it's not going to be a boring story. So in the audience, like there might be quite a lot of you all who already know what observability is, or there might be few people who are new to this or hearing this term for the first time, or few of you all might be pretty expert in what this is. But the purpose or aim of this talk, what I'm sharing, is to introduce you all to this topic, and I would like to share some of the learnings and experiences to show how it can be helpful for testers. So before we jump into the topic and understand what observability is, I want to quickly take you through a simple scenario. And the credit to this scenario goes to Praveen said, from whom I took this inspiration from. So I like this example. So it's very simple to explain. So that's why I'm using this. So imagine, what would you do if you come across this kind of a foggy road while you're driving in a weird weather condition? One thing that comes to our mind is that we need to slow down, right? But why do we need to slow down? It's because we don't have the visibility of what's ahead of us, and we kind of consciously make a decision based on risk, right? So if we are not able to drive, does that mean that we are bad drivers, and that we cannot drive fast enough on a foggy road? Not at all, right? In fact, we are good drivers because we are kind of making decisions based on risk. So does that mean that the car isn't good enough to drive faster? So our cars can drive faster, much faster, but we kind of just hold them back because we know it's bad to drive when there's no visibility, right? So in this situation, we are kind of ultimately stuck, right? So that was about the cars. But how about these planes? Like, they all the time fly among the clouds. And then how do they manage doing that? So it's because the pilots have additional instruments to do that, and they don't have to solely rely on their eyes. So now, what is it to do? What is it this scenario to do with the software development, right? So we all know that the current trend is all about going faster, and in order to do that, we all are trying to adopt a lot of different practices like agile, moving into DevOps, working on a distributed systems, or you call it as microservices architecture. And all we are doing this is because we want to deliver value quickly, right? So by doing this, all we are doing is we are building faster cars. So we are going in, like we are moving into microservices architecture. We are trying to work on something new, and we are doing it. The reason why we are doing it, most of us, is for simplicity of the development. But on the other hand, there is a lot of complexity and multiple parts moving at the same time, which means it's even more complex. So when distributing a system, we are also distributing the places where things might go wrong. So we know we need visibility, but how can we get visibility into the system? And the answer to that is by having observability. So before going ahead in trying to understand what observability is, let's first try to understand why do we need it in first place. I always look for real life examples to understand any given concept, and kind of don't get convinced by just like, reading through theoretical concepts. So I'd love to share my real world example with you of how I came to an understanding of why we need observability. So, bit of context, like I joined a new team, um, and the entire team was new. We all were new to the new team was new. So I kind of had an opportunity to join this team and work on a really exciting and interesting product. Um, it was an automated invoice system which was built on microservices architecture. So a context of what that product was, it used to take real-time data on a day-to-day basis and make decisions on based of that data to automatically kind of send some emails or send create some kind of task or anything to do with the credit controller. The work we as a team were doing was to build new features and of course fix any kind of bugs. So as a tester, uh, or anyone, like as a tester or as a developer or any kind of role, when we start working on a new product, the first thing we try to do is to try and understand the product, right? So I was doing the same. So when I joined this team, when I this domain was completely new to me, the tools were completely new to me, so I was trying to understand the product and all the tools that we were using. So the more I was learning about the product, I started to feel that it was pretty complex. So I kept thinking that because this domain is completely new to me, so I kind of have this feeling that this product is too complex. And not just this, but there was another reason for me to feel this way, and that was that I I came across, like I've seen similar pattern for a lot of like we used to use Jira board, so there were a lot of tickets being marked as blocked. So I kind of saw this pattern of tickets being marked as blocked, quite a lot of them. And I used to see a lot of production issues each day, which is like, that's fine, like, to see production issues, but the problem was developers would pick those issues so that they can investigate to find the root cause. They used to spend quite a lot of time. In fact, they used to spend few days, a couple of weeks, and then they would mark those tickets as blocked because they did not have any information about why uh, it was causing that issue, where, and kind of they had no clue, no information. So they would just mark them as block. And that was, I saw that pattern for the first time. I mean, I've been working on quite a lot of different products and different domains, but this pattern for me was pretty much first time. So that kind of made me think, what's wrong here? So I'm a tester, so I'm always curious about whenever I come across new things, right? So I was curious to know why this is the pattern and why we are marking these things as blocked. And at this point, I stopped thinking that product is complex as an excuse. Like, because I was using that, like, oh, this is a new domain, so its product is complex, so that's why these are the things. But I stopped thinking that as an excuse. So interestingly, at the same time, I was trying to read a lot about observability without knowing, like, you come across some new topic, and if it interests you, you try to find out more, right? It was similar thing for me. So I was trying to know more about it, like try to understand what it is and where it is used. Not just by reading, but by also trying to use different tools, like, which has some kind of open source tools, just to try to understand what does it bring. Like, I was just trying to use those. So at the same time, like, I was just having a conversation with one of my team member who was a developer. That kind of gave me some food for thought. And that is what, and at that point I realized, oh, this is what we are missing on our product. And that's what observability was. So that conversation for me was like a light bulb moment. Okay. And this kind of unlocked a lot of answers to a few questions, but of course it did open up a lot of questions as well. I did got an answer that we had very less visibility, or in fact no visibility into our system, which is why a lot of our issues were being marked as blocked, as the developers could not debug to find more information. And because they could not debug, they could not find the root cause. So now I keep talking about observability. Now let's look into it, what it is. So there are quite a lot of definitions that can be found if you Google about it, but this is one simple one, which I kind of think it's very easy to understand. So observability is a measure of how well internal states of a system can be inferred from external output. So it means how well can you answer any questions about what's happening on the inside of the system, but by just observing the outside of the system and without having to ship new code to answer new questions. When systems are down, you need to find answers by asking questions as quickly as possible, right? Like, why do you want to ask questions? You ask questions so that you can find out some more information, right? So for you to answer those questions and for you to get that information, the systems need to be observable so that it can explain what's happening, so that we can find out what's happening on the inside of the system by just observing from the outside. But how can we make the system observable? What do we need to do, or what is it that we need to implement to make our system observable? The answer to that is by using the data. Now, how can we get the data, and like what type of data do we need to have to have an observable system? We can get the data to make the system observable by adding instrumentation, and that instrumentation can give us the data that can be in the form of Either it can be logs, it can be traces, or it can be metrics. So it's up to us what we instrument, how much we instrument, and what kind of data do we get, and what kind of data do we need on a product to make our system observable. So now let's talk about each of these in a bit more detail to understand what these are. So let's first look into logs. So a log is it is a it is a simple message which kind of has some information. It might have a timestamp, it might have a payload that helps to give more context. Again, it is up to us what information we add to that log. So in simple words, a log is a simple message that gives us some more information. Again, if we are talking about distributed systems, so we do not want to get into, so if you're talking about distributed systems where you have quite a lot of number of services, you do not want to get into each service and try to look at the logs, right? So rather than that, you want them to have centralized at one place so that it's easier. So you just don't need, so it's like you just don't need to have some information thrown away in the form of logs and have a confidence that your system is observable. No, you cannot. So you need to have some sort of centralized logs, and those logs should be in some kind of structure so that they are structured logs and so that they are easily searchable. So let me give you an example. So while I was working with this team, we used to have logs. It's not that we didn't have any logs, but we used to have some logs in place that were stored separately for each service. So for each service, we used to have logs, and we used nlog for the log service. And to access those logs, we had to access those separately for each service, and the only way to view those was to open those logs in a Notepad++. So whenever there used to be a kind of an issue and we wanted to figure out what's gone wrong and where things went wrong, we would end up having like multiple Notepad++ tabs open. It was such a pain. I mean, to add to that, the only way we could search the logs was by using Control F. I mean, can you imagine how difficult it was, like, to just find out some kind of information. So this is the reason why, like, logs should be easily searchable, and the way we can make it easily searchable is by having structured logs. You don't So while you're looking for information, or when there is some kind of issue you're trying to figure out, you don't want to get into each service separately and figure out the information, because by the time you get into different service and look at the logs, you kind of lose your context of what you're trying to look for. So that is the reason why the logs should be centralized, and all the logs from all the services should be at one place so that you can easily find out the information. Now let's look at metrics, what a metric is and why do we need it. So a metric could be a simple trending number, or it's kind of a value that kind of expresses some kind of data about the system, right? It could be like anything, like systems metrics. A metric could be in the form of a metric could be for application metric or a business metric. So these metrics might represent different things, and metrics have kind of a name, a time, and a value. Okay, and these metrics are usually represented as counts or measures and are often kind of aggregated or calculated over a period of time. For example, a system metric can tell you how much memory is being used by a process out of total, and it could be like an application metric can show you the number of requests per second being handled by a service or error rate of an API. And a business metric could be something like how does it take how long does it take for a user to log in? How long does it take for a user to load a page? So it could be any kind of a metric. So metrics are really good at aggregating the things, but not really good at pinpointing specific detail about something like at this particular time, this is the customer who was having a problem. So we won't get that kind of a data when we have when we look at metric. So how could we do that? By using traces. So traces are kind of like telling you a story, which gives you more detail uh, and more. It's kind of give you more level of details, right? So it shows the entire flow of the request, and I think it's kind of a really valuable while debugging. A single trace shows the activity for an individual transaction, or it could be request, or it could be an event as it flows through an application. It kind of shows the end-to-end request, and I think traces are really critical part of observability as they kind of provide you a bit more context. So I keep so I have been saying that with observability, we can ask questions about we can ask questions to find out the information, right? But what kind of questions can we ask to like just to give you a simple like sample questions? I can say we can always ask like, oh, why is X broken? Like, why is this service broken? And then try to find out some information. And then what services does my service depend on? And what services are dependent on my service. What went wrong during this release? Why has the performance degraded over the past quarter? Or you can also ask what logs should we look at right now? And what did my service look like at this point X? So these are just a few questions, but they could be any kind of questions that you can ask while you're trying to find out some information. So just like how we talk about DevOps, we cannot say that we as a team are doing DevOps or following DevOps by just having some automated tools in place, right? It is more than tools. It is a cultural and a mindset change. It's not just about getting everything automated and you can say that, oh yeah, we are following DevOps. It's more than that. It's a cultural shift, right? Similarly, we cannot say that we are doing or we are following or we have observability by just having some different tools in place and having some sort of logs in place. It is not about just getting the tools and sending some data and trying to observe. It is more of a mindset shift and then making use of the tools uh, um, along with the context, trying to observe the system. Now, you might be thinking, um, what's like, I'm a tester, right? So now you might be thinking, like, what's in for testers with all this observability and all these new tools? Like, how can it be useful for a tester? Of course, like, we can say it could be useful for a developer while they are debugging for issues to find more information, but how is it useful for a tester uh, when these tools are in place and they have access to these tools? So for a tester, it's easier if we have access to these tools and if we understand these concepts, it is easier to find information around issues. So how do you think it would be easier? So for example, while we are testing, we might see some unexpected behavior or maybe we see some kind of failures, right? Having these kind of tools in place and having access to these tools and understanding of how to use these tools will help us look under the hood to find out what is happening with the request. And not just that, but it allows us to learn more about our system or about a product of how it communicates and works. So I would be using dev tools like, to see what's going on when something did not look right while I was testing, but I wouldn't get enough information. So having these tools helped me and getting a bit of understanding of these concepts helped me in getting more information that again I can use to add to the tickets or whenever I'm raising any kind of a bug, which will in fact help the developers. It's not just about finding the information while looking into these issues, but it could also help me and help us as a testers to uncover understanding of our product. So it is also one of the tool for exploring and asking questions for testers. Like, as testers, like I'm very curious, always very curious whenever I'm testing something. Testers are always curious explorers and great at asking questions. So, as a tester, I tend to ask a lot of questions when I don't understand things. So, as I said, testers are great at exploratory testing, not just good at asking questions, but the testers are like, I'm always curious to find more information about the system. So, while exploring the logs, or any kind of these instrumented data in any form, testers might point out where some more instrumentation is needed. So, for example, if I'm working on a team, I would always, while I'm testing, I can always look at the different data, different instrumentation that we have. And if that is not providing enough information and enough visibility, then I can always work with the developers to improve that instrumentation. And not just that, but it also supports and helps testers for testing in production. It allows the teams not just to shift left, but shift right. So I really like how, so this is one of the tweet I came across. I really like how Marit has put this together, saying that a lot of times, um, good debugging and good exploratory testing are indistinguishable. So when developers explore, when a developer explores, they call it more often debugging, whether they know there is a problem or just suspect there could be, and they're trying to explore to find more, right? So when tester explores, debugging is close to the last word used. So to summarize, by making systems observable, anyone on the team can easily navigate from the effect to cause in a production system, and it makes it easier to debug. The goal of observability is not just to collect logs, metrics, or traces, but using the data to get the feedback. It just doesn't uh, allow us to find the knowns of the system, but allows us to know the or find the unknown unknowns. So every learning experience and every journey has something to take away, right? So I had some takeaways and some kind of learning experience too when I was on this journey of how I joined this new team and how I kind of figure out what was missing and how I kind of learned about observability. So the key takeaway for me was that we as testers can go out of the way. So we care and advocate about quality. a lot. Like that could be related to um, bringing in the improvements in the process. It could be by bringing in new tools related to test automation. It could be trying out new things, but that's not the limit. So I learned that we do not have to limit ourselves and say that this is not related to testing, so let's not look into it or let's not learn about it. So I saw the problems within my teams, which they were going through. I was curious to understand why we have that kind of problem. And I saw that developers were getting frustrated when they could not resolve production issues. And I noticed that the product owners getting frustrated by answering the clients with not enough information related to those production issues. So it was quite evident and round frustration going within the team. So I didn't knew the answer or solution to it, but being active in the community and seeing new tools and concepts and exploring them and then finding out the solution, and then trying out myself using open source tools and then presenting that as a suggestion to my team. Not limiting myself to testing tools only and trying to think outside the box to help my team. So we are not there. I mean, when I left that team, we were not there yet in terms of observability implementation, but we kind of had started our steps into it. So from having no observability to having some structured logs and centralized logs that could be easily searchable by running easy queries and trying and looking at the information, trying to find out answers to the question. So I think we had a very good starting steps to start with to getting into more observable system. So to end with, I would like to say that observability gives power to the entire team to get the visibility whenever they need it. And observability is much more powerful when you apply with the right mindset and kind of a clear process in conjunction with the tooling. It allows the team. It allows the teams to become proactive towards the issues rather than being reactive. It also gives the power and also empowers everyone on the team, whether it's like developers, ops engineers, SREs, or testers. So, if there's one thing that you could uh, take away from this, is that we we all believe in when we are trying to build powerful solutions. We all believe that there needs to be diverse roles when building the powerful solutions, right? Then why not have these diverse roles like developers, testers, ops, or SREs to be involved while building these kind of solutions and while building the observability on the system, and uh, everyone can add their value while building this. So yeah, thank you so much for joining my session today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on Twitter. And my Twitter handle is Praveen underscore Khan 10. And I do share all my learnings, and I write by writing. And my blog post, you can find everything on my blog post, which is parveenkhans.com.
Right. Thank you very much, Parveen. Yes, so it is our Q&A session is what we are going to have now. And we'll go ahead and take some time for the questions. Before that,
Sure.
a kind reminder to everyone, please be sure to type your questions into the Q&A section if you haven't so far. Okay. Uh, Parveen, there is one question I will read out to you. It goes
Mhm.
as, I have a question about finding web elements. Which is the best? I mean, ID, XPath, or CSS sector?
I think, yeah, to answer this question, I mean, it's like I can't say which one is the best tool, but there are quite a lot of different tools available through which we can, find the different XPath or CSS selectors to while we are like I'm assuming that you're trying to get this question to w- just to implement some kind of test automation or anything. I'm assuming that. But yeah, I mean, I just can't say which one tool is the best tool, but there are quite a lot of tools these days, like Selectors Hub or anything like which kind of gives you more control over when you're trying to find the exact ID or XPath kind of information. So I hope that kind of helps.
Okay, thank you. Right, so we will move on to the next question. What are the things we have to follow as best practice for software testing?
Best practice for the software testing. I mean, this is pretty. There's quite a lot of things that can we can talk about as a like where I'm not sure best practice for software testing as in while you're testing. That's what I'm kind of assuming. Uh, so we cannot say this is a best practice and you go ahead and you take this and you should apply those kind of a best practice and it will work. So it is quite, I always say that it is quite a lot of context that you need before you come across what is the best practice. So you might be working like you might be working for me to answer this. I think there's a lot of different context we need to know before even answering this. Like we might to know what kind of team you're working on, what kind of processes you're working on. So I think there's a lot of uh, other context that needs before we say that okay, this is the best practice for software testing. And only one thing I could say is like one thing that will never change is like having the right mindset and having critical thinking whenever you are testing something. I think that would be my answer. But apart from that, please reach me out. Like I can have more further discussion and conversation about this because it's a very pretty broad various topics that can be discussed on this question.
Okay, right. We have another attendee had forwarded another question. As a fresher, what is the best approach to understand a system quickly?
Yeah. I think the best approach, I mean, what I have followed is if you have any kind of like documentation related to what your product is or your what your system is about, try to read that and try to understand the architecture. I think the best another best thing is what I always try to do is try to pair up every different role within your team to understand what the system is and how that has been built and understand the strategy behind that. I think the best strategy would be like trying to have conversations, pair with the developer, pair with the BA, pair with the product owner. I think that's how that can help you understand more, and not just by reading and pairing, but also trying out exploring the system to understand what it is doing and then asking the questions. I think that would all these together would be one of the approach that I would take if I'm joining a new product or a team.
Okay. So we are having quite a bit few of questions. So I'll move on to the other question as well. Another attendee has asked, can you please explain about the RPA a bit?
Um, I am sorry, but I don't know what RPA is. I don't understand what RPA means. So, yeah,
Okay, right.
yeah,
So
sorry about that.
yeah,
I don't
I
know.
think we can. Okay, we can move on to the next question. It goes as, what is the future for trading of software testers?
Future trading or future trending? Yeah, I mean,
Future
um,
trending as yes,
it
it
could be
should.
anything. Yeah, anything to do with future of a software tester, I think. Yeah, I mean, I know there's quite a lot of different trends going on about like AI coming in, and we thinking that there's no space for testers, or maybe it could be um, like the tools record and play tools coming in. So there are quite a lot of different things coming in. So I think one thing I think of the future of the testing or a tester is that it's not just about tools that are coming into the place, but it is we our mindset is always going to be required whenever we are building whenever we are testing or building a product. So the trend is like we our role has changed quite a lot since since quite few years. It's not about just be there sitting in there and testing and finishing off, but it's more about like we as our testers role has changed into more of like being an influencer within the team, advocating and coaching about quality. It's not just about certain things, but there are so lot of different hats that we have to wear as a tester. And it is nothing, no matter whatever new tool comes in, but we as a tester, I think it has changed quite a lot in the sense, as I said, like we are kind of a glue within the team. So I think that is how I see how the um, trend or how the future of the testing has changed a bit from how I mean, in fact, I used to work as a tester previously, saying, and like I used to just be there, not being part of any other conversations or part of like any other processes, but more of like testing and finishing off. But now it's completely way opposite and way different. So I think that's how I see the difference. I hope
You,
that makes
Parveen.
sense.
Yes, thank you, Parveen. So just another few more questions, if you don't mind. Yeah. So one attendee had asked, can you please explain about IoT testing?
I have still not come across any. I have not again, I can see those questions about IoT and AI, but all I can say is like, yeah, I have not experienced myself or explored myself into that area yet. So I think I won't be the best person to give you any kind of answer or explanation about what that is from my point of view.
Okay, I think so. That concludes the next question in that case.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yes. Just there's another, just one question which will be related. As I see, what is the difference between observability versus monitoring?
Yeah, good question. Like something related. It, there are quite a lot of people talking about this, right? The difference between. So I think what I feel is like, monitoring is something like you monitor for something which which might go wrong, and you want to keep an eye on it, and you want to build alerts on top of it, and you want to monitor those. So it's kind of you already have that in mind, and it's like it's kind of unexpected known things that you kind of monitor. Whereas for observability, I think it's pretty much vast. Like it's like quite a lot to think about. It's like it's not something that it is something that you would need whenever you I feel like whenever there are production issues or wherever you find some issues, they are never something which are always never unexpected things, right? You get a lot of things which are completely new or pretty unknown to you. You would never imagine, and you can't build monitoring on top of like every unknown you're coming across, right? So for me, observability is more about being there so that you can make use of it whenever you come across any unknowns, and trying to figure out more about that, and trying to learn and implement some kind of strategy so that it doesn't occur again. And monitoring is about, something might go wrong, so let's monitor that, keep an eye on that, so that we know when that goes down. So I think that's how I see the distinction between monitoring and observability. I mean, it's more than that, but to just point out initial thing, I think this is what I could mention. I hope that
Okay.
helps.
Yes. Thank you very much, Praveen. So, yes, it looked like we've covered all of our questions in all. And if you do have further questions, you can follow Praveen through Twitter and LinkedIn, and you can write to her. Yes. So, Praveen, is there anything else you would like to say or comment before we wrap up the session?
I think, yeah, thank you so much, like, for having me on this conference. And I think it was really interesting and something it was good to share here, as I said. Yeah, and that's it. Like, just anyone, if anyone feels like you want to reach me out, please feel free to reach me out. Happy to connect with everyone. And yeah, I think that's pretty much.
Yes. Thank you very much, Praveen. We are so humbled and honored to have you today with us. And thank you very much for the great and exciting session you conducted.